Your GPS will happily route you through every single town on this list. It will not warn you that you've just entered one of the most dangerous zip codes in the entire United States. Florida is famous for sunshine, theme parks, and retirement communities, but tucked between the beach resorts and the gated golf courses are 12 towns where the violent crime rate is 6, 7, sometimes 8 times the national average. Towns where locals will tell you point blank, do not stop for gas here after dark. One of these places has streets named after Arabian Nights characters and a city hall that got raided by the FBI. Another produced more NFL players per capita than anywhere in America, right alongside one of the highest murder rates in state history. There's a town 10 minutes from Palm Beach Mansions where a gunman opened fire and killed 2 people at an apartment complex named Azure Estates, which sounds like a luxury resort, not a crime scene. And the last town on this list? It's where millions of tourists fill up their tanks on the way to the Florida Keys, completely unaware they're standing in the most dangerous municipality in the entire state. If this sounds like the kind of content your weird uncle would appreciate, do him a favor and send him this video. Or just hit subscribe so you never miss another deep dive into America's strangest places. Number 12. Daytona Beach, Daytona Beach. Spring break capital, home of the Daytona 500. The world's most famous beach, according to the city's own branding. And that branding is doing some seriously heavy lifting, because Daytona Beach also posted one of the highest violent crime rates in the entire state of Florida between 2015 and 2019. According to FBI data from that period, the city logged roughly 1,230 violent crimes per 100,000 people. For context, the national average hovers around 380, so Daytona is running more than triple. The famous boardwalk and pier along the Atlantic Ocean, the one you've seen in every spring break movie, has earned some colorful reviews from actual visitors. TripAdvisor reviews describe the area as intimidating and crime-infested, with open drug use and aggressive panhandling happening in broad daylight. And that's the daytime experience. After dark, locals know to stay away from the beachside core entirely. The city does have a 20.5% poverty rate, which partly explains the numbers. And in fairness, about 70% of Daytona's neighborhoods actually score well on safety metrics. The danger is concentrated in specific pockets, mostly around the boardwalk and the downtown beachside corridor. So if you're visiting the Speedway for race week, you're probably fine. If you're wandering the boardwalk at midnight looking for a good time, that's a different conversation. In 2022, Police Chief Jakari Young created a violent criminal apprehension team, a specialized unit focused entirely on getting the most violent offenders off the streets. And to their credit, the initiative has cut homicides and gun crime. So things are genuinely improving. But Daytona Beach still earns its spot as the starting point on this list because the gap between the marketing and the reality is something you have to see to believe. You've got Bike Week bringing in hundreds of thousands of motorcycle enthusiasts, spring breakers flooding the beaches, and NASCAR fans packing the Speedway. And 3 blocks from all of it, there are neighborhoods where residents are afraid to walk outside after sunset. The tourism economy generates billions of dollars, and somehow the poverty rate is still above 20%. That math doesn't add up, and the crime rate proves it. Number 11. Sanford. Sanford, Florida, is a city of about 60,000 people sitting on the shores of Lake Monroe, and it has one of the most beautiful historic downtowns in Central Florida. Brick-lined streets, a river walk along the water, trendy restaurants, the whole package. It's the kind of place a real estate agent would describe as charming and up-and-coming, but Sanford carries a weight that no amount of downtown renovation can fully lift. In February 2012, 17-year-old Trayvon Martin was shot and killed in a Sanford neighborhood, and the case became one of the most divisive moments in modern American history. The shooting exposed racial fault lines that had existed in this city for generations, and those fault lines go back further than the Trayvon Martin case. In 1946, a young Jackie Robinson was booed off the field and threatened by the Ku Klux Klan while trying to play baseball in Sanford during spring training. The city literally chased Jackie Robinson out of town. Today, Sanford's overall crime rate sits around 33 per 1,000 residents, which is about 38% above the national average. Motor vehicle theft is a particular problem, with roughly a 1 in 238 chance of getting your car stolen. The historic Goldsboro community, one of the oldest black townships in America, has dealt with decades of disinvestment, deteriorating housing, and environmental contamination from nearby brownfield sites. The good news is that homicides dropped from 8 in 2023 to 4 in 2024. The trajectory is heading in the right direction. The downtown Riverwalk really is beautiful. The restaurants really are good. But when you walk through the Goldsboro neighborhood just a few blocks away and see boarded up homes next to contaminated lots, you understand that Sanford isn't a city with a crime problem. It's a city still living with the consequences of decisions made decades ago. Some of those scars heal slowly, some of them don't heal at all. Number 10, Palatka. If you've never heard of Palatka, you're not alone. This is a small town of about 10,000 people on the St. Johns River in Putnam County, and it looks like a postcard from old Florida. Brick streets, hand-painted murals on downtown buildings, a blue crab festival, bass fishing tournaments, and a name that comes from a Native American word meaning cow crossing. It sounds adorable. The crime statistics would like a word. According to 2024 FBI data analyzed by multiple crime tracking services, Palatka's total crime rate lands around 4,003 per 100,000 residents, which is 89% above the national average and puts it in the bottom 8th percentile nationally for safety. The larceny theft rate alone runs 2.1 times the national average. Neighborhood Scout puts the combined victimization odds at about 1 in 25. So for every 25 people living in this quaint little river town, one of them is going to be a crime victim this year. The drivers are drug trafficking and deep working class poverty. Putnam County has been one of Florida's poorest counties for decades, and Palatka sits right in the middle of it, looking like a charming weekend getaway while quietly posting some of the worst property crime numbers in North Florida. The town hosts a blue crab festival and bass fishing tournaments on the St. Johns River. It's the kind of place that shows up in hidden gems of old Florida travel articles. And then you check the FBI data and discover that your odds of having something stolen in Palatka are more than double the national average. If you're wondering how that's even possible for a town this small, with murals on the buildings and a name that literally means cow crossing, welcome to Florida, where the postcards lie and the crime data doesn't. Number 9, Pine Hills. Just west of Orlando's theme park Glow, in unincorporated Orange County, sits a community of about 66,000 people that locals have nicknamed Crime Hills. The residents hate that nickname, and they've been actively trying to rebrand it as Prime Hills. The reason they need a rebranding campaign at all tells you everything. The Orange County Sheriff's Office designated Pine Hills as a violent crime area back in 2006. By 2008, the community recorded 16 homicides and 376 robberies in a single year. A targeted police initiative did cut the murder rate in half by 2009, which was a legitimate success. But Pine Hills came roaring back into the national headlines in February 2023 when a gunman killed 3 people, including 24-year-old TV journalist Dylan Lyons, who was reporting on a previous shooting, and 9-year-old Tiana Major, who was inside her home nearby. A journalist covering a shooting got killed during the coverage. A child died in her own living room. Pine Hills sits roughly 10 minutes from Universal Studios. You can stand on a street corner where a drive-by shooting happened and see the lights of the theme parks on the horizon. Families visiting Harry Potter World have no idea that one of Central Florida's most dangerous communities is a short Uber ride from their hotel. Longtime residents will tell you the reputation is outdated and unfair, and for certain blocks, that's probably true. The Prime Hills rebranding campaign is genuine, and there are parts of the community that are stable, working-class neighborhoods where people look out for each other. But other sections, particularly around Powers Drive and the commercial corridors along Silver Star Road, still show up consistently in Orange County Sheriff's Department crime maps. Resident reviews mention speeding cars, the sound of gunfire at night, and a general sense that you need to be aware of your surroundings at all times. For a place this close to the happiest place on earth, Pine Hills feels like it exists in a different dimension entirely. Number 8. Cocoa, not Cocoa Beach. Cocoa. Two very different places. Cocoa Beach is the cute beachside town across the causeway where astronauts used to hang out and where tourists go to watch rocket launches from Kennedy Space Center. Cocoa, on the other hand, is the Space Coast's dark side. This city of about 20,000 people has a violent crime rate around 1,082 per 100,000, which is nearly 3 times the national average. Assaults and burglaries are the big numbers, and the crime is concentrated in very specific pockets. The southeast and downtown corridors carry the bulk of the danger, with roughly a 1 in 33 chance of victimization in those areas. If you move to northwest Cocoa, your odds drop to about 1 in 110, which is dramatically safer. The charming Cocoa Village district of boutiques and waterfront restaurants sits uncomfortably close to the higher crime zones. You can have a nice dinner at a locally owned restaurant, walk 2 blocks in the wrong direction, and find yourself in a completely different world. People browsing antique shops in the village have no idea what's happening a few streets over. The city keeps getting lumped into Space Coast. Tourism marketing, which is technically accurate but wildly misleading. When SpaceX launches a Falcon 9 rocket from Cape Canaveral, the whole world watches. Nobody is watching what happens in downtown Cocoa after the tourists drive back across the causeway. The space industry brings billions of dollars into Brevard County. Cocoa sees very little of it. The rockets go up, the tourists go home, and the crime statistics stay exactly where they are. Cocoa is the part of the Space Coast that the tourism board pretends doesn't exist. If you've been watching this far and thinking, wow, Florida is intense, you have no idea. This next one involves a mass shooting at a block party, and it only gets heavier from here. If you're the kind of person who likes content that doesn't sugarcoat reality, hit that like button so the algorithm knows to show you more of this. Number 7. Fort Pierce. Fort Pierce calls itself the Sunrise City. It's got a historic downtown marina on the Indian River Lagoon, some of the Treasure Coast's best beaches, and a population of about 48,000 people. It also has a violent crime rate that sits roughly 47% above the national average, with about 544 violent crimes per 100,000 residents. But the number that put Fort Pierce on this list is a specific event. On Martin Luther King Day, January 16, 2023, roughly 1,000 people gathered at Eluse Ellis Park for a car show block party. What should have been a community celebration turned into a crime scene when gunfire erupted into the crowd. 8 people were shot. One of them was 29-year-old Nikita Bryant, a mother who was there with her 9-year-old daughter. Bryant died the following morning. Her daughter was standing right next to her when it happened. Kemi Ricardo Parson was convicted of second-degree felony murder and attempted first-degree murder and received a life sentence. After the shooting, the St. Lucie County Sheriff banned the promoters who organized the event, installed surveillance cameras at 5 public parks that had been, in his words, plagued by violence and cracked down on large gatherings. More shootings followed in 2024, including one at the popular Maravilla Dog Park. Fort Pierce is a city that's genuinely trying. The marina along the Indian River Lagoon is beautiful. The beaches on Hutchinson Island are real. The downtown has been getting investment and attention. But the violence keeps finding its way into the places where families gather, into parks and block parties and community events, and that contradiction is impossible to ignore. A 29-year-old mother died at a celebration honoring Martin Luther King Jr. That detail alone tells you everything about the gap between what Fort Pierce wants to be and what it's still fighting against. Number 6. Lake City. Blink. And you'll miss Lake City on Interstate 75, halfway between Jacksonville and Tallahassee. It's a small North Florida town of about 12,000 people that markets itself as the Gateway to Florida. Cute slogan. The problem is that the Gateway has a crime rate higher than 99% of communities in the state. Neighborhood Scout pegs Lake City's combined crime rate at 53 per 1,000 residents, giving you roughly a 1 in 19 chance of being a victim. Property crime drives most of that number, at about 42 per 1,000, but the violent crime is real too. The town has seen a mass shooting at Annie Maddox Park, and in one of the more bizarre incidents, a shooting inside an Arby's restaurant. When fast food joints are making the crime blotter, something has gone sideways. The reason Lake City punches so far above its weight comes down to geography. It sits directly on the I-75 drug corridor, one of the primary trafficking routes running from South Florida up through the southeastern United States. Federal sentencing data from 2023 showed that drug offenses made up over 31% of federal cases in Florida, above the national average, and Lake City absorbs a disproportionate share of that trafficking activity simply because of where it sits on the map. It's a rest stop for people transporting things that aren't legal. The poverty rate runs between 20 and 30%, which means the local economy doesn't exactly offer a ton of alternatives. Drive through Lake City during the day and you'll see springs, parks, and a downtown that's trying to attract visitors. Drive through at night and you'll understand why the people who actually live here don't stop at the gas stations after dark. A quaint small town sitting on top of a drug highway. Florida keeps delivering that contrast like it's a subscription service. Number 5, Riviera Beach. Riviera Beach is the entry on this list that will make you question everything about Florida real estate pricing. This city of about 37,000 people sits directly across the intracoastal waterway from Palm Beach. That Palm Beach, the one with the mansions, the yacht clubs, and Mar-a-Lago. You can literally see the wealth from Riviera Beach's waterfront. You just can't touch it. Riviera Beach has long held one of the highest per capita murder rates in all of Florida, roughly 7 times the national average. Between 2021 and 2023, the police department investigated an average of 10 homicides per year, and every single homicide in 2023 involved a firearm. Everyone. The event that defines recent Riviera Beach is the Azure Estates shooting. On March 16, 2025, 20-year-old Tremonte Terrell Gibson opened fire at the Azure Estates apartment complex on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. The ShotSpotter gunfire detection system picked up approximately 18 rounds. Gibson killed 2 people, including his own cousin John Richard Halliburton, the third, who was 25, and Dillian Wright. 4 others were wounded, including a pastor named James Easley. Gibson then carjacked one of the victims as he fled the scene. He was later indicted on 2 counts of first-degree murder with a firearm, 3 counts of attempted first-degree murder with a firearm, and 1 count of carjacking with a firearm. Azure Estates. The name sounds like a luxury condo development with a pool and a concierge. It is the opposite of that. Singer Island, the safe, upscale part of Riviera Beach, is technically within the same city limits, which skews the overall numbers. The wealthy residents on Singer Island and the families living near MLK Boulevard share a mayor and a zip code, but they live in completely different realities. And North Palm Beach, one of the safest towns in all of Florida, is a 10-minute drive away. Wealth and poverty, separated by a bridge and an ocean of statistics. If you ever want to understand income inequality in America, just drive from Palm Beach to Riviera Beach. It takes about 7 minutes and covers about a century of policy failure. We're in the top 4 now, and if you've been paying attention, you've noticed these entries keep getting darker. That's by design. These last 4 towns are on a level that makes everything before them look tame. If you're subscribed, you already knew this was coming. If you're not subscribed yet, now is the time, because the content we put out on this channel only gets more unhinged from here. Number 4, Belle Glade. Welcome to Muck City. Belle Glade sits on the southeast shore of Lake Okeechobee, about 60 miles from the mansions and manicured lawns of Palm Beach. 60 miles in an entirely different universe. The town of roughly 16,700 people is built on black muck soil, some of the richest agricultural land in the country, and it produces massive amounts of sugarcane. It also produces an absolutely staggering number of professional football players. According to Brian Mealer's book about the town, at least 30 former Glade Central Raiders have reached the NFL since 1985. With over 60 from the wider Belle Glade and Pahokee area. Per capita, this might be the greatest football factory in American history. It is also one of the most dangerous places in Florida. According to FBI data from 2003, Belle Glade had the second highest violent crime rate in the entire country at 298 per 10,000 residents. By 2010, the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office estimated that half of young men between 18 and 25 in Belle Glade had felony convictions. Half. And in the mid-1980s, the town was dubbed the AIDS capital of the world, after recording the highest per capita AIDS infection rate in the United States, with 37 cases in a population of roughly 19,000. The violence hasn't stopped. In 2025, an off-duty Palm Beach County Corrections deputy named Basil Powell was ambushed and shot dead outside his own home on the 1,400 block of Northwest Avenue D in Belle Glade. He was 39 years old, a law enforcement officer, killed on his own doorstep in his own neighborhood. Muck City is a place of extraordinary resilience and extraordinary danger. The football legacy is real. The poverty is real. And the distance between Belle Glade and the nearest Palm Beach Country Club is the most damning 60-mile drive in America. Number 3. Pahokee. 3 miles east of Belle Glade on Muck City Road sits Pahokee, Belle Glade's smaller, poorer, and somehow even more dangerous sister city. Locals call it the Say. The population is about 5,500 people. The poverty rate sits around 40%. Median household income is under $27,000, and in 2019, according to FBI Uniform Crime Report data, Pahokee posted the highest murder rate of any municipality in the state of Florida. 11 homicides in a town of 5,500 people. That's a murder rate of 183 per 100,000. The national murder rate that year was 5. Pahokee's was 183. The violent crime rate overall hit roughly 2,026 per 100,000, which is more than 5 times the national average. This decision to put Pahokee at number 3 seemed small until you look at what else is here. 3 miles east of town, down a dirt road through the sugar cane fields, sits Miracle Village, a small, isolated community of more than 100 registered sex offenders living in former migrant worker housing. The compound has been the subject of multiple documentaries, news investigations, and even inspired a Criminal Minds episode. The residents of Miracle Village ended up there because Florida's residency restrictions for sex offenders are so strict that this remote patch of agricultural land is one of the few places they can legally live. So you've got a town with a 40% poverty rate and the highest murder rate in Florida, sitting 3 miles from a colony of convicted sex offenders in the middle of a sugarcane field. And all of this is less than an hour from Mar-a-Lago. If that combination doesn't make you want to double-check your next Florida Airbnb reservation, nothing will. Number 2. Opa-locka. This is the one with the streets named after Aladdin. And yes, that's real. Opa-locka was founded in 1926 by aviation pioneer Glenn Curtis, who decided to theme the entire city after 1001 Nights. So the streets are named Alibaba Avenue, Sinbad Avenue, Sherazad Boulevard, Aladdin Street, and yes, there is actually a Sesame Street. The city has the largest collection of Moorish Revival architecture in the entire Western Hemisphere: onion domes, minarets, arched doorways. 20 of these buildings form a National Register Historic District. On paper, Opa-locka sounds like it should be a quirky tourist destination, a hidden gem, the kind of place travel bloggers put on their off-the-beaten-path lists. In practice, Opa-locka has been repeatedly ranked among the most dangerous cities in America. Neighborhood Scout puts its total crime rate at around 54 per 1,000 residents and notes that 99% of Florida communities have a lower crime rate. The poverty rate hovers around 29 to 30%. But the real story in Opa-locka is the corruption. In March 2016, the FBI raided Opa-locka City Hall. The investigation ultimately led to the conviction of 7 people in a bribery and extortion scheme, including former city manager David Chiverden, who received 38 months in federal prison, and lobbyist Dante Starks, who got 5 years. One city commissioner, Terrence Pinder, died by apparent suicide 2 days before he was scheduled to surrender to authorities on bribery charges. The governor of Florida declared a financial emergency and sent in an oversight board after it was revealed the city was nearly $8 million in debt. The violence is ongoing. In February 2025, a murder was reported on the 1300 block of Sherazad Boulevard. A murder on Sherazad Boulevard. The street named after the legendary storyteller from 1001 Nights. You cannot make this stuff up. Later that year, another shooting was reported outside a 24-hour nightclub. Opa-locka is the most absurd entry on this list because the gap between what it looks like and what it is might be the widest of any town in America. A fairy tale city where the FBI raided City Hall and people get shot on streets named after storybook characters. If a screenwriter pitched this, a studio would say it's too on the nose. Number 1, Florida City, the last real town before the 18-mile drive to Key Largo and the Florida Keys. Millions of tourists pass through Florida City every year on their way to paradise. They stop for gas, maybe grab something from the outlet mall, take a photo in front of the Everglades Eco-Tour kiosk, and keep driving south. What most of them do not realize is that they just stopped in the most dangerous municipality in the entire state of Florida. According to FBI-derived data, Florida City's violent crime rate has been reported between roughly 1,500 and 2,290 per 100,000 residents. That's over 6 times the national average. The combined crime rate, including property crime, is about 109 per 1,000. Neighborhood Scout calculates that residents have approximately a 1 in 9 chance of being a crime victim. 1 in 9. Flip through your contacts list, count 9 people, and statistically, one of them would be a victim if they lived here for a year. Florida City has been called one of the carjacking capitals of America. The poverty rate runs between 32 and 41% depending on the source and the year. Its position at the southern end of the Florida Turnpike makes it a natural hub for drug trafficking routes into the Keys and the Everglades. And the contrast is almost cruel. Glossy outlet malls, airboat ride billboards, and Everglades gift shops sit within blocks of neighborhoods where the local advice amounts to 3 words. Get gas and leave. A town of 13,000 people, serving as the doorstep to one of the most beautiful drives in America, and it has a higher crime rate than cities 10 times its size. Think about that. You're driving south through Florida, the palm trees are beautiful, the sky's turning pink, you can already taste the key lime pie, and you pull over for gas in a town where your odds of being a crime victim are 1 in 9. And there's no sign, no warning, no indication whatsoever that the friendly-looking gas station with the Everglades alligator statue out front is sitting in the statistical epicenter of Florida crime. The Keys start 18 miles south of here. Millions of people drive through Florida City every year chasing sunsets and margaritas, never once looking at the town they're passing through. If they did look, they might not stop. And if they didn't stop, they'd have to drive another 18 miles on fumes before the next gas station in Key Largo. Florida City knows this. The tourists have no choice but to stop here. And that captive audience is the only thing keeping the outlet malls and the gas stations in business. That is your number 1. If you want to find out, click the video on screen right now. We've got a whole series covering the most shocking, overlooked, and misunderstood places in the country. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. I'll see you there.